Welcome to the All Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Steve Inman, joined as always by star producer and co-host Chris Burrito. The Kevin Durant trade request is officially history as the Nets and KD's boardroom company have announced they will continue the partnership. That will have ripple effects across the entire NBA. But before we get to all that, Chris, my friend, how are you?
Hey, Steve, I'm so happy to have that whole Kevin Durant saga over with. We can finally move on and talk about other things like, how the Knicks will do and whether they'll get Donovan Mitchell. Um, right now, it looks like the biggest splash of the night, which happened right before we went to bed, was Patrick Beverley being traded to the Lakers, which I think will also really help their cause. They really needed some help there. Um, and we'll talk about more about that in a little bit, but they're basically getting Pat Bev, who shoots 37% from the 3-point line. He'll be their best 3-point shooter. He'll bring intensity on the defense, and immediately upgrade this team. So we'll talk more about that in a second, but let's get to the Kevin Durant stuff. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you to not talk about Kevin Durant rumors for the time being?
Well, I would say I'm a 9 because it really allows the NBA to continue to go back to business. Nobody's waiting for Kevin Durant anymore. Hopefully, this means the Donovan Mitchell trade can get moving. Hopefully, it means other, big trades can get moving. And look, I didn't believe he was really getting traded after the first week of this. The offers just never really improved, Chris. And if the Nets are going to take 10 cents, the Nets just were never going to take 10 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar. And so because of that, if the offers don't get better, they were never going to move them. And we were curious, how much power does KD have here with 4 years left on his deal? And the answer is not much. He tried to get everybody fired. He tried to get himself out, and neither of those things worked. And we continue to see guys with a year to at max 2 years on their deal who say, I'm not going to re-sign here. Those are the guys who get traded, not the guys about to start a new Supermax.
So who's the biggest winner out of this whole equation?
To be honest, I think they're all winners. I think Sean Marks and Steve Nash are winners, knowing that the owner backed them against a really, powerful player. I think Kevin Durant's a winner because he did not hurt his legacy further by asking for getting that trade, and he's got a championship contending team around him. I think, at the end of the day, this is probably what's best for Kevin Durant this season. I really believe that his best chance to win is in Brooklyn right now with Kyrie Irving, and if those guys are healthy, I think this is a championship team. We saw this play out with Kobe Bryant, right? Kobe Bryant was on the Lakers in 06, 07. They were losing in the first round. He requests a trade. They talked to Detroit. They talked to Chicago. There wasn't really a lot of traction. There wasn't really that big monster offer that really swayed the Lakers in any way. They told them, we're bringing you back. You're coming back here. And then they wind up swinging the huge Pau Gasol trade, and then they win a championship. What's to say the Nets can't do that, in December, January, get a rejuvenated Ben Simmons, flip him for a star that could go with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant.
What does the star that could go with them even look like?
It's funny you say it. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I know we had this later, but could a Ben Simmons and picks for Donovan Mitchell trade make any sense?
I think if you're Utah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
I
If
know if you're Utah, like one of your big incentives to trading Mitchell is to be as bad as possible, but there are ways, Ben Simmons is not going to move the needle and turn a team that's probably going to be 15 games, 10 games under 500 at the deadline and turn them around. I think he would have a similar impact on his own as Mitchell would. So I think that's something that could really appeal to both Utah and Brooklyn if they decide Ben Simmons is not the right fit next to Kyrie and KD.
I think that's the other sort of aspect for the Nets. Like if everything goes right, they will be right up there with the Celtics, right up there with Milwaukee and even the Heat. But I just wonder about the stability on that team. Like Kevin Durant today doesn't want to leave, but like at what point, if this team is struggling, I wonder if he does anything similar later on. But
Well,
who's to know? Who's to say like Kevin Durant a few months from now says, you know what, I tried it, it didn't work. What then?
to me, the only way this team struggles in the regular season is if Kevin Durant gets hurt again. That's the only way I see this team not being above 50 wins. And if he gets hurt again, is he really going to be the one to be, this team isn't working out, I got to get out of here, when he would be arguably the problem if he's the one who gets hurt. So I really believe that this team is going to be one of the, I would put them probably third in the East right now. I think they're going to have to rest some guys like Kyrie and KD as their older players, where Boston and Milwaukee might be gunning for that number one seed, but at the same time, they're still a contender. And the postseason's a different animal. They lose in the first round again. I could see this popping up again in July, like it did this year. But at the same time, I think they're smooth sailing for the regular season.
Also, what happened? Do COVID policies get updated or what?
Unclear. Oh no, they did. The Kyrie came back. Kyrie came back in like March.
You're right.
Yeah, I almost forgot myself. That was a long time ago now, and that would have been a disaster because we're both big Met fans, and that was going to affect them as well. And there's a bunch of guys on that team that aren't vaxxed, so that magical Met season would have went the way the Nets did. So very lucky that was changed from a baseball perspective. Chris, I just mentioned before that it seems like now other moves can happen now that the KD floodgates have opened. You already seen guys like Isaiah Thomas tweeting about it. Finally, now other guys can move. Pat Bev tweeted about it as well. And then what happened? A few hours later, he was traded from the Utah Jazz to the Los Angeles Lakers for Talen Horton-Tucker and Stanley Johnson. And Chris, I like this move a lot for the Lakers. You get a real defensive identity with Pat Bev. He's a guy who could start. He's a guy who can come off the bench. He's a guy who's going to bring a little swagger to that team. And as you said, which might be a little more sad than anything, he's probably the best shooter on that entire team. And so I like this move a lot. And what do you think?
So I like it a lot too. I think the best part about it is that Pat Bev has played with high usage players next to him. He's played next to James Harden. He's played next to the likes of like all the talented wings in Minnesota. So I mean, I like it for many reasons, but the other added element to it is that he just like complements that team really well. They needed someone like that who doesn't really need the ball, someone who could shoot, someone who could bring the intensity defensively, and he's just a great fit. And he's been wanting to play in LA since he went on, some sports talk show saying that he would immediately change the culture. And you know what? I don't knock him for that. I think he is someone who could like, be an X factor of sorts. He was for Minnesota.
I understand that he never expected to stay in Utah, but to go on First Take and all these shows and basically say I want to be a Laker is kind of crazy when you think about it. Like that's something that would never have happened 5 years ago. He's under
No.
contract, but at the same time, he is must see TV, and his play on the court I think is really going to help the Lakers. Are they done? Is there another big move coming? Do you see a Pat Russell Westbrook backcourt imminent?
There's definitely something else coming, and I think that the Pacers trade that has long rumored to be Buddy Hield, Miles Turner for Russell Westbrook, and the 2 first-round picks that everyone's been after. And honestly, if I'm Indiana, I would do it.
I think I would do it on both sides. I would, because
that's
they
the
don't.
that's the
Go ahead.
easiest trade. That's the easiest trade they can make without involving more teams. That's doable. That actually presents a win-win.
A Pat Bev, Buddy Hield, LeBron Davis, Turner roster does not have any depth, but if they're healthy, that's a team I believe could win multiple rounds in the playoffs and be in a position where a Golden State loses an injury, a Suns team chokes, they could be in the NBA Finals. And that's 2027, 2029 first round picks. I love first round picks, Chris. I hoard first round picks. At the same time, they're going nowhere fast. You have LeBron James at the end of his prime, I mean, his prime is gone, but at the end of his superstardom, go win a championship, go be relevant, be a threat. The last thing Laker Nation wants is to be celebrating LeBron in January for the all-time scoring list. And they're like, okay, well, now the Lakers are done for the year. You know, they're going to battle for the 9 seed and we won't care. Go get this thing done.
Yeah, I think part of the aspect that complements the team so well is like if you have Miles Turner, someone like Anthony Davis could just work on the post, or like, and there ends up being so much more room to operate because you have shooters around LeBron and Anthony Davis, which is what was their hallmark when they won the championship in the bubble. So, the solution to the Lakers is not rocket science, because all you needed to do was to pair those guys up with shooters. And like, if you do that with the guys that we just mentioned, they'll be in a better place than they were before. And if Anthony Davis is healthy, watch out.
And I like this Miles Turner fit with Anthony Davis, believe it or not. I'm always kind of nervous about having two bigs in one spot, but Davis has made it very clear he does not want to play center. And Miles Turner is a guy who does some damage in the post, but he's also a guy who can shoot from 3. So I don't think he's going to clog Anthony Davis's area while also doing the dirty work as a center. So I feel like it's kind of the best of both worlds. If you're Anthony Davis, you'll make LeBron happy. You'll bring in shooters. Again, we've figured it out probably early Miami days, right? Surround LeBron with shooters. You're bringing in 2 pretty good shooters, and again, those 2 guys are worth a first-round pick. And then you have to, unfortunately, you have to lose another first-round pick to dump Russell Westbrook. So you're going to save money in this trade, and you're going to add 2 starting players to a LeBron and Anthony Davis. So I think they got to get it done. And if they're not going to get it done, they're too stubborn. I think they're going to wind up really struggling this year.
Yeah. But I think that trade really puts them in a better position than they were before. I mean, just getting rid of Russell Westbrook, like that in itself helps many ills.
Having said all that, it is a high risk because if a Buddy Hield gets hurt or he's not the right fit, this is it. You're out of picks for the decade.
Oh, yes.
And you traded Taylor Horton Tucker already. You have no more young players to trade unless somebody wants Austin Reeves. And so that's it. This is your team for the next few years, and you better hope that everybody stays healthy, because if not, you're done. And
listen, I think that tomorrow's never promised, and I think that
I would do it.
Yeah. And you said it's a big risk, and like, listen, those first round picks can end up being like not very good players in the long run. So
and I was going to say,
I think the commodity of having a good shooter, and a rim protector that can shoot, are very much worth that. And you get rid of Russell Westbrook, that's a win, an addition by subtraction in itself.
I was going to say, I lost my train of thought, but I was going to say basically with the Lakers, who cares about a 2027 first round pick? You might be fired by then if things don't go well, but it's the Lakers and they keep everybody, and everything's a family. Magic Johnson comes back 10 different times. And so you're not really worried about your job security, whereas other GMs, I think, would have already traded these last two picks.
Yeah.
Whereas this regime right here might be thinking we might actually need those picks, so they might still be here after 5 bad years in 2029.
No, I like that trade a lot. I would do it. Yeah.
All right, Chris. In more disappointing news, Chet Holmgren is going to be reportedly out for the season with a foot injury. He got it in an injury in the Pro-Am, and you and I have different beliefs on this. Should the Pro-Am be banned or less frequent than they currently are in the summer?
My understanding is that particular Pro-Am exhibition was sanctioned or like sort of like frowned upon by the NBA. So
do you want to explain why?
I'll be honest with you, I don't really understand why. My point of concern with this whole thing is that like these exhibition games, right? Like the NBA has like I don't know how much stake they have in these. It's just like it doesn't make sense for that, like a one of their commodities, which are other players, play in them. Um, and essentially, like, you could lose your top prospect just by playing these games, just like Chet Holmgren. Like, granted, it was a freak injury, but like, it's Chet one day, and then what about the next? It could be somebody else.
Yeah. My thought on that is if they're not playing in a pro-am, they're playing somewhere else. It's
Okay.
basketball. They're playing most of the year. And he's a lanky kid. And if it didn't happen here, I don't know why it wouldn't happen somewhere else. And I don't think banning pro-ams is the right way to go. I do agree. If the NBA doesn't like this, the NBA should step in and try to make it as safe as they possibly can. But at the same time, a foot injury where LeBron James is coming at you is not something I believe could have been prevented, you know, like with better safety from the NBA. So
Fair.
it sucks. It's a guy who I was excited about after he had a really big summer league, but at the same time, hopefully he comes back healthy. The Thunder, are going to tank now again.
Hmm.
And imagine they end up with Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson to go with, SGA and Giddy and I guess Poku to a degree. That's a fun group to go with our buddy Gumby here. So I really hope that he can come back healthy and better than ever. Maybe win a 2020 3-4 season rookie of the year,
Mhm.
and they'll get another high draft pick because of this.
Okay, so I just wanted to revisit the point that I was talking about earlier
Yeah.
about the court. Um, so it was reported that the court was too slippery and players could not keep their grip because of the condensation on the hardwood floors.
Okay.
So while that was the problem eventually, it didn't look to be the case when Holmgren landed awkwardly. So those two coincidences might have happened, but um, you know, I think every single basketball player is going to say the same thing. Injuries are part of the game, and I'm sure Chet Holmgren's going to probably say the same thing, that it's part of the game. It was a freak injury. Um, I just wonder how the NBA is going to handle it. Like, I understand that NBA players are going to play in the off season. Like, we're big fans of the Black Ops
Yeah.
page where you see different NBA players play there. Um, I'm just curious. Like, even Norman Powell was one of those guys who got injured during a Drew League game. And they don't hold any ill will towards those exhibition games. So I just wonder if the NBA does anything about it.
I don't think they will. I really don't. Unfortunately, I just think it's one of these freak injuries. There's nothing really they could do about it.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, Chris, let's get to our final thoughts right after this. Okay, Chris, final thoughts time. Whether we asked for it or not, Donovan Mitchell has a trade list of the teams he'd prefer to be traded to. It not really too surprising. The Knicks and the Heat, the two teams that have been most frequently talked about, but interesting, the Brooklyn Nets are in there. We mentioned them as a potential Ben Simmons for Donovan Mitchell, kind of starting a return there. Do you see any validity to that?
Well, here's the thing, and I think this is kind of shrewd on whoever leaked its part. The Knicks always seem to be more compelled to do things if they know that the Nets are involved. We've seen this historically
Carmelo.
with Carmelo Anthony, and I think Dolan is very cognizant of that. So whoever leaked it probably knew that this was that was in mind, either to make this happen or to make the Knicks make a haste decision where they would be the ones being screwed over. On that note, I don't like the fit events of Donovan Mitchell next to Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. It's two front court, two backcourt guys that can't defend. Although the idea of Donovan Mitchell returning to New York but playing for Brooklyn really hurts. Um, it's a painful aspect. I don't see how the Heat could even get Donovan Mitchell. Um, those were my initial thoughts when I saw the list. We obviously know that he won't he loves New York, but That's what I got.
I just can't see him starting the year in Utah. I really can't. And that's a team that should blow it up. They already started to blow it up. And I don't really buy this whole, well, they're going to try to build around Donovan Mitchell on the fly. If you're going to do that, you would have started already. You wouldn't be trading a Pat Bev. You wouldn't be, dangling all these other vets. And so I really believe they're going to trade him. It doesn't make sense not to at this point. And for the Knicks to come out and be like, we're offering 5 first rounders. Yes, only 2 are unprotected, plus Obi Toppin and Reddish, and the salary filler and Fournier. That should be close to enough, right? Like they got to be close on that. And if Utah's gonna haggle, I'm kind of what you said last week. They're gonna get burned at some point. They're not really gaining leverage here.
They're not, and I think it's probably as good as it gets.
Are the Nets? We mentioned Nets. Like they don't really have picks, so you better love Ben Simmons, who hasn't played in now over a year, and who knows if he'll be happy in Utah. I just don't see how the Knicks don't have the best package without. And I don't mean to be a homer. I rarely am. I just can't. I rarely am. And I just can't understand how
What does it?
a team in the mix has a better package than the Knicks one with the 5 first rounders, 2 unprotected, plus Obi, Reddish, and Fournier.
I just find it crazy that Donovan Mitchell may end up getting a less valuable offer than the Rudy Gay one and the Rudy Gobert one.
The Rudy Gobert thing was insane. And I honestly, the Rudy Gobert trade might have held up the trade market more than Kevin Durant. It was that insane.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that. I think it probably scared off a lot of teams with the Kevin Durant thing, thinking that like, okay, if the Rudy Gobert trade is going to require that many picks, imagine Kevin Durant, a player who's like much more talented than Rudy Gobert is. In some ways, I'm glad it happened for everybody else.
It doesn't help the Knicks though trying to get Donovan Mitchell right now because the Jazz are saying, okay, if Rudy's worth 4 first rounders and a young player, then Donovan's worth what, double that? And that's kind of what they're asking for right now, and that's why this thing is being held up. But at the same time, it is encouraging to see a Knicks front office that is smart enough to not just hand over everything immediately. So good job, Knicks. Good job to us here on the All Hoops podcast. Chris, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show?
Not much. I'm just excited for the season to start. And hopefully as the weeks get closer, we'll find a resolution with the whole Donovan Mitchell status. We'll break down over and unders and our picks for each conference.
Can't wait to start that very soon. That's going to do it for us. Hopefully, we'll be back next week with NBA action. If not, as Chris said, we'll start with some over-unders on this upcoming NBA season.
Bye, everyone.